welcome Jeff H.
I don't know where to set my water up here. Let's sit it here. I'll sit it here. I'm going to set a timer real quick. My sponsor told me I need to get sober halfway through, so I'm setting a timer for 25 minutes because I'll go over. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Jeff. I'm an alcoholic. Is that too loud? I've been sober since September 21st, 2015, and I'm grateful for that. My life today is completely different than it was almost 6 years ago. And I say that it's different. It's not a whole lot different from the outside looking in, but I tell you from the inside looking out, it's completely different in that my feelings and emotions no longer drive my actions and decisions. I don't need to drink over my feelings anymore. It's kind of cool to be speaking here tonight. I didn't even know about this group when y'all started. Brandon is a friend of mine. He used to be a home group member where I go. And he told me about this group opening up. And I will tell you, I don't know if any of you guys have this character defect in here, but I like to judge and punish people who aren't doing things the way I think they should be doing. And there were a lot of people during COVID who weren't behaving the way I thought they should be. But this group was doing things the way I thought they should be doing, in my opinion, just my opinion. And so I come over here. Y'all were temperature checking and masking, and I was so excited. Y'all were my first in-person meeting. But I'll tell you, when I say my life is different, there were people in my home group who refused to wear a mask, went rogue, had backyard meetings. Someone went and started a whole new group in another little city so they could meet in person and not have to distance wear a mask. I was stomping around my house mad for months over that and judging them. But what I didn't do this time, what I would have done 6 years ago, I didn't call any of their home group members and stir stuff up. I called my sponsor and discussed how I felt, but I didn't do anything. Some of those people were my good friends and still are, and I continue to reach out to them and meet them for lunch and maintain that relationship, even though they weren't doing things the way I think they should have been doing. And that's what I mean. The old me would have cut those people off. I would have picked up my toys and went and played in another sandbox and changed home groups. And I would start distancing myself from people, from the fellowship, and from God. And I eventually would drink over something that stupid. And right now, we're back in person, and it all just seems like, what was the fuss? But that's just how my life has changed since I got sober. So I will tell you too, I know there's some people who love to stand up here and tell their story. My sponsor's one of them, and he's really good at it. I don't enjoy this, never have. I've been told I say yes, so here I am. And I'll tell you a funny story real quick before I get rolling here. The first time I told my story was at Bishop Arts. You might have been there. I had like a year sobriety, and I stood there, and I was horrible. And I went home, and I beat myself up like we do. And I thought, you know what I need to do? Well, everything I've been good at in my life, I've had to really practice. I'm going to start practicing my story. Every single day I'm going to practice, even though I have no speaking engagements lined up. My goal was to be a great speaker. And then I realized what a stupid ego, how self-centered that was. I'm like, my goal is not to be a great speaker in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's to hopefully carry the message as best I can and say something somebody needs to hear. That's it. So I stopped that practicing my story every day. That went on for a couple months before I realized how ridiculous that was. So anyway, I will start way back. I grew up in Austin, Texas. My mom, anybody here know what Taylor, Texas is? Have y'all heard of it? It's a little tiny town east of Round Rock. My mom was born there, grew up there. My grandfather was an alcoholic. He died of alcoholism. My grandfather never learned to read, and I think probably he married, my grandpa married my grandma because they had to back then. She got pregnant. She never wanted to be a mom. She was a nurse. She worked the night shifts. He worked the day shifts, so that they were never together, and my grandfather never learned to read, so my mom would come home from school. He'd pick her up in like his old El Camino and take her to like some pool hall beer joint and put her at the bar and order a hamburger and tell her to do her homework while he played pool and got drunk. He never knew if she did her homework or not because he couldn't read. So, she just wanted out of that environment. So she married the first guy that came along that paid her any attention, and she was 17, and they had me at 18. And he never wanted to be a dad. I don't know what he signed up for. I think he was escaping his life too. But I've heard a lot of people stand at the podium and talk about how they grew up in these magical homes. Dad was a doctor, mom's an attorney. They had everything, yet they were alcoholic. That wasn't my experience at all. I don't have a whole lot of memories of what it was like when my dad was there, but I do know if you upset him, you were always nervous when he was around, because if you upset him, you were going to get beat, you were going to get thrown around the house. There were times when guns were pulled on the people in the house. He would whip my mother. Dishes were crashed on people's heads. We had to flee and call the police. And I say all that because even growing up in that didn't make me an alcoholic. Qualified me for another 12-step fellowship, but not AA. And my brother grew up right there with me, was 1 year younger than me, and he had 2 drinks, didn't like the taste of it, never drank again. So clearly that didn't have an effect. I didn't like the taste of it either then. I had to push past that. So my dad took off when I was in 3rd grade, and I really am grateful for that he didn't stay. But the one common thing that I've heard in AA, almost every single speaker that stood at the podium, we have this common thread that we all say we didn't feel like we fit in. We all felt different. And I remember that as far back as 3rd grade. I remember standing in that classroom looking at those other kids and I just stood there and I thought I felt stupider than them, I felt fatter than them, I felt uglier than them, and I just didn't feel like I fit in. I didn't understand how they did it. And if one of them wanted to be my friend, I thought, what's wrong with you that you want to hang out with me? And I carried those feelings with me for a long, long time. But when my mom got divorced, she was still young because she had me at 18, and she was ready to go out and date again. And she had these little happy hours and these parties at her house. And she wanted to make alcohol, normalize it for me so it wasn't taboo, because she got into trouble with stuff like that when she was young. So she'd invite me in and let me have a margarita at like 12 or 13 years old. And I never got drunk then, but you know what? I got that warm, tingly feeling, and I knew I liked it. And I would always be right in there whenever she'd have those get-togethers, trying to refill people's drinks so I could go finish them off in the kitchen and getting that blender going. And she wanted to make it where I could drink at home when I got older and didn't have to sneak out to drink. Her plan failed. As soon as I was old enough, I wanted to get out of there and drink. I knew I wanted more than what she was letting me do in the house. And back then, I don't know if they still do this, but I was 15 and I got what's called a hardship license. I don't know if they still do those, because I had to take my brother to school. I had a part-time job already, and you'll figure out how old I am. My first car was a 1970 Chevrolet Impala. I don't know if anybody in here remembers those. It was about as big as the Titanic, and it was teal green and a big white top, and it didn't have like the seats like you guys are used to now. It had just like a big sofa in the front and a sofa in the back, and we could put 4 kids in the front and 4 kids in the back. And I was 15, drinking age was 18 then, and I had my fake ID, and 8 of us would load up in that big Impala, and we'd go to in Austin, to this place like a beer barn where you drive through and just load up the trunk with cases and cases and cases of beer. And I never ever drank for the taste. I didn't like the taste of beer. I always drank for the effects. I liked the way alcohol made me feel from the get-go, and I never could stop once I started. And when I talk about those feelings of feeling different at a young age, here I am in high school drinking like this, and all of a sudden, when I got that feeling, all of a sudden I got taller, I got thinner, I got funnier, and I felt like I was participating in life and I wasn't just observing anymore. Alcohol did that for me at the beginning until it didn't at the end, but it just helped, and I felt like all of a sudden now I've arrived, like Bill talks about on Wall Street. I'm here. And I didn't have any big external consequences like you hear about. That was one of the things that kept me out of Alcoholics Anonymous for such a long, long time. I'd come into these meetings and hear people talk about their DUIs, probation, getting fired. I mean, I did get fired from jobs for drinking, but I'd hear people talk about their daily drinkers, morning drinkers. A lot of those things hadn't happened to me yet. And nowhere in the book does it ask us, you have to have those things to be an alcoholic. So I would leave. But the things that were happening to me were my grades were slacking. The people, we gravitate towards the people that drink like us. I thought I was going to be this big music major, and I was drum major when I was a junior in high school. But all of a sudden, all that took a backseat. I dropped out of band because it was more important to sit in the bleachers of football games and get drunk with my friends. And that's how it went. I mean, of course, I got pulled over by cops, but it seemed like a different time back then. They weren't so strict with it. They'd pull me over, and I'd tell them, I just live down the street, and they're like, just get home safe, young man. They'd see the bottle of vodka in the back seat. They'd take it away from me, and no consequences. There was this country western place we used to go to in Round Rock called the SPJST Hall, and they put a ticket on your collar if you were underage, and you could go in. Of course, we just ripped those tickets off when we got in, and we'd get drunk, and then we had beer in the pickup truck, and we're driving back, and sirens are on, and we're drunk, and we're like, oh no, the cop's behind us, and roll down the window, and we're throwing bottles out the window, and the cop sees all this, and still, I didn't get a DUI. I tried real hard to get DUIs, and I never did. But then, I go off to college, and it's wheels off. I went to San Marcos, I went to Texas State, it was Southwest then, and if you've ever lived in a college town, there's an excuse to drink every single night. There was 50-cent pitchers at this place on Monday, 75-cent margaritas here, and I was waiting tables in college, which didn't help. If anybody ever worked in the restaurant industry, that's a rough place to be. It's a fun place to be, but I would wait tables until 10 o'clock at night. The restaurant would close at 11. We'd start drinking about 9 on the job, and then shut the restaurant down, and then go to the bars and shut those down, and then go to someone's house, and then the sun's coming up. And I didn't do a good job of making it to my 8 a.m. classes in college back then. And I told this lie. It took me 6 years. I finally mustered enough credits to get through college. But I told this lie. Have you ever told a lie so many times that you kind of believe it yourself? And I told people, I had to work full time. I had to pay my own way. So that's why it took me longer. Those two things are true. But the problem was I wasn't going to those classes, and I'd have to withdraw so I wouldn't get the F. And I was paying for these classes and getting no credits and just spinning my wheels, getting nowhere. And the whole time I'm thinking, I'm just acting like a normal college kid. Although I've been there 6.5 years, and all my friends have graduated and got married and have careers, and there I still am, just trying to get enough credits to get out of there. And that was the story the whole time. I thought every time I've had these problems, I always just thought, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. And I was, because of the people I was hanging out with. And I don't know if you guys have had this experience, but as far back as I can remember too, I was always going to be happy when I got somewhere else. I remember in middle school, I'm going to be happy when I get to high school. And then I'm going to be happy when I get a car. Or I'll be happy when I get to college. And every time I got there, I'm still there. And I'm still not happy. It's something else, something external that I'm looking for to make me happy. And I graduate from college and I have a job, and there's still that underlying depression that I didn't know then, like the book describes as a spiritual malady, that I'm filling up with alcohol, but I keep looking for these external things to make me feel better. And so I decided that I needed a boyfriend then. That's going to fix it all. So I find one at the bar, and he drank worse than me. And he did drugs that I hadn't done yet. And he partied at a level that I hadn't partied at. And it was fun at first. And then, of course, it wasn't. And everything was his fault. I didn't have to look at myself because he was the heavy drinker. I wasn't. I wanted him to settle down. But I ended up moving to Dallas with this guy. And we're partying a lot. And checking my time here. And I was a school teacher at that time. And I should have gotten fired probably because I taught math to high school kids, and I would show up to the school wearing the same stinky clothes I was wearing at the bar driving in, and I'd run to the gym locker room and take a quick shower and put those stinky clothes back in. And you remember those big movie projectors, those big TVs that were strapped to the metal cart? I'd wheel one of those into my math class and show some National Geographic film while I napped all day at my desk in my math class, and I got away with that. And the kids love me. Mr. Hargroves, said my last name. Mr. Hargroves hung over today. And so, that went on for a while. And, again, nothing's making me happy. I keep like, what's wrong now? So now he's the problem, so I get rid of him. I end that relationship, and I thought everything's going to be good now. He's gone. And what happened was it did the opposite. My drinking went worse. I mean, it escalated. And I said I was a weekend drinker, a big binge drinker back then, but the weekends started usually on Thursdays and went till like Mondays. And the days in between the drink got more and more unbearable. And I remember going out like in public and just looking at people at the mall or at the grocery store and just looking at them like, how do they do this? How do they just get through a day without putting something in their body? I wanted to do that and I couldn't. And there were times I remember just going in my kitchen and like, don't do this today, don't do it. And I realized I didn't have a choice then, that that alcoholic part of my brain would kick in. It's like, it's okay, Jeff, go ahead and do it today. We'll worry about this tomorrow. You deserve it. And I always would. And I was always gonna stop drinking tomorrow, or I was always gonna stop drinking Monday, or, you know, then it was, I'm gonna stop drinking January 1st. And then it's my birthday in March. So you know what? I can't stop drinking until my birthday. I've got to keep going. And then it's spring break and Easter and something else. And, you know, I'm on that merry-go-round for years that I don't know how to get off of. And there's just this underlying depression. And I didn't want to kill myself, but I didn't care if I was here anymore. And I remember going home and just like barely being able to get into the door and just laying down and just crying. I wanted it to stop. And the drinking is no longer fun. It's something, like I said, that I had to do just to feel normal. But I do remember when I would make plans to drink, I don't know if you had this experience, as soon as I knew I was going to get to drink, I started feeling better. Driving to the bar, driving to the liquor store, that ease and comfort would start coming over me. And I'm starting to think maybe I have a drinking problem. And I asked my drinking friends about that, and they assured me I didn't. So I kept drinking. And it's true, I had the conversation. I remember we were at Ojeda's drinking margaritas, and they had that conversation like, you're fine, Jeff. And but I didn't want to do AA. I really didn't know anything about AA other than I knew there was some God involved in this, and I wanted no part of that. So I tried every other option out there. I went to all those therapists, those drug abuse counselors, and I got some self-help books. I was going to fix it myself, and I never could. And I was going to manage my own drinking. I'm just going to slow it down. I hate beer, so I'm only going to drink beer when I go out. That'll fix it. And of course, once I hit that line, I'm back to tequila and other stuff. So it never fixed it. Or I'm only going to day drink. That was my other big plan. I'm going to orchestrate these big brunches with friends. And I did do that. And all that did was I would start earlier, you know, and then the night would just go on and on and on. And I always had these plans. I'm just going to go out and have one drink. I'm just going to have one or two. And it never felt the sun was always coming up. And so I finally broke down after I'd exhausted all my options. And I went to AA, and because I'm gay, I thought I had to go to Lambda. I didn't know there was other AA groups out there. That's where I went. And I went to a noon on a Monday, and I raised my hand. I picked up the Desire chip because y'all looked at me when it was time to get one. So I got one. I really didn't know what it meant. And somebody asked me out on a date there at that meeting. And I'm like, AA is cool. And so I know how that's not appropriate now, but I thought it was cool then. And so I started hanging out with those guys over there, and I went to a lot of their open meetings. I went to a lot of their game nights and their fundraising for the Roundup stuff. And I couldn't tell you what the steps were then. I never had a book. I never got a sponsor. But what I did do is I stopped drinking for a few months. I was able to hold my crazy together while I was with them for a little bit until I couldn't. And then I blew all that up. And I will tell you, I was back out at the bar the next day. I was at, I remember at the Roundup doing a shot. And I just felt that warm come over me. And I thought, what was I doing over there with those losers? All they did was talk about when they used to be fun. I'm back. And so I thought it was great. And within a week, I was blackout drunk driving my car and got stuck up onto the dark rail tracks and could have got killed by a train and couldn't get off the tracks. And I'll tell you, when I came out of that blackout and realized where I was up on those tracks, I didn't think about I could get killed. Did I kill someone on my way here? I was on those tracks, right under 75 on your way to Deep Ellum, kind of under there. I got stuck up there. And the only thought that came to my head was, I'm not finished drinking tonight. How do I get my car off of here? So I'm wearing boots, and my car, those tracks look like they're about that deep when you're drunk. But I've seen them since, and they're pretty deep, those dart train tracks. And so my plan was, I just need some traction. So I'm gonna pull my floor mats out of the car and put them under the tires, and that'll get me some traction to get off here so I can keep going. I didn't ever notice that all the tires were busted and flat. And so I'm drunk and I'm pushing those floor mats under there, and then I lose my balance and grab the rear windshield wiper of his little SUV, and I fall back and it slits my hand. So there's blood everywhere, and the cops pull up and I'm down and there's blood everywhere, and I'm pushing those floor mats. But I didn't get a DUI. Again, they set me down and zip tied my hands, and they took me in. I thought I was getting a DUI, but that was the weekend that the Super Bowl was here in Dallas, and I think they were really busy that night. And so they just gave me a public intox ticket and a reckless damage ticket to those tracks, and all that got dismissed in court because cops never shown up. And so I was back off to the races. I settled down for about 2 weeks after that. I'm like, oh, that was a real close call. I'm gonna stop now. And of course I didn't. I slowed down, and then it amped right back up, because every time I stopped, I couldn't stay stopped because I didn't have a solution to the alcoholism. I didn't know what else to do. It was just me white knuckling it. And let me grab some water here. My mouth is dry. Sorry. All right. Okay, so there was a point, you hear all these big, big bottom stories. There was no big bottom story for me at the end, other than everything that I used to enjoy in life, everything that was fun to me, that made me happy, was all gone. There was no joy left. I had no ambitions. I was just barely making it through the day. I had two emotions. I knew how to be really sad or really mad. And at one point I thought, okay, how much money do I need to just keep living like this until I die, or are you gonna go give AA a try? Which one is it gonna be? Because I just couldn't imagine keeping going. I couldn't imagine continuing to live the way I was living. Even though on the outside, I still had a job, I still had a car, I still had a house. So if I've heard speakers stand up here and say, oh, I was homeless and now I have all this stuff, so what? I mean, if stuff kept us sober, we wouldn't have alcoholic celebrities. Stuff doesn't keep us sober. So I finally decided I'm gonna give AA a try. And I was driving to work one day, so when I lived in Oak Cliff, and there was a little storefront that had the triangle and the circle. And I'm like, I didn't know there's an AA right here. And I used to work out at a gym that was in Preston Center, and I saw all these people coming out of this building one time, and I asked a friend, what are all those people doing in there? And they're coming out of the Preston AA group. All of a sudden, there's little AA meetings popping up all around me, and I didn't believe it then because I didn't believe in God, but I do now. And someone said God was getting in your way. He was putting those AA meetings right there for you, in your face to go. And I finally did. I went to this Bishop Arts group in Oak Cliff, and I went in there on a Monday noon, and you were there, Chris, and they flipped the topic, I think, to a step one meeting because I was new, and they ran and they gave me a little book and a pamphlet and a phone list and all this stuff, and anytime anybody shared, they all looked at me, and I just wanted them to stop. I just wanted to be invisible. And at the end of the meeting, everybody was so nice. And after the end of the meeting, I got up and I went out to the sidewalk and I threw all that crap in the trash. I'm like, nope, not for me. I'm not like these people. And I just suffered one more week until I went back the next week. And I sat back down. And I came back the next day, and then I came back the third day, and I was pretty miserable by day 3. I'm sitting in these meetings. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anybody because I'm too scared to talk to anybody. The steps don't make any sense to me on the wall. I don't understand how doing what those 12 steps say are going to help me get sober. And Ezra was chairing this meeting. I don't know if you were there, But I do remember they were reading the daily reflection. I remember that. And it was something about your expectation can cause resentments, which then with 3 days sober, you don't understand why we're talking about those things. You just want somebody to tell you what to do. And they put the topic out, they roll around the table, and by the time they get to me, let me turn this timer off, I got 11 seconds, and I'm sobering up right on time. They said, Jeff, would you like to share? I said, absolutely. I have some stuff you guys need to hear with my 3 days of sobriety. And I'm not allowed to cuss from the podium with the sponsor I have. I got reprimanded already, but I was cussing in this meeting that, yeah, I have some stuff to say. I have an expectation that somebody in this effing room is going to tell me how these effing steps work. Is somebody can help me? And I'm screaming in this meeting. And the chair, his eyes got really big. He's like, stop talking. Someone will get with you after the meeting. So I just sat down and pouted and was mad. And after the meeting, this guy gets up and runs around the table and he goes, is anybody working with you yet? I'm like, did that sound like anybody was working with me yet? So he said, meet me tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at this coffee shop and bring your book. And I left that meeting just so relieved. I'm like, finally, somebody's going to help me. Somebody's going to be there. And I showed up. And I was so excited. I had my spiral notebook. I was ready to write down all these secret instructions he was going to tell me. And all we did was talk for like that first hour. And before I left, I'm like, what do I do? He goes, well, I want you to start saying this prayer every day. Do you guys know the set-aside prayer? Okay. Well, he had me do that prayer. He said, I want you to do that prayer every day. And I said, but I don't believe in God. He goes, I didn't ask you if you believe in God. I want you to do this prayer every day. But I don't believe in God. That went back and forth, that exchange, for about 5 or 6 times before I gave up. And you know what? I did that prayer. I don't know what I thought I was going to do because I didn't believe in God. But anytime it just got so uncomfortable, I would just say that thing over and over and over. And I got a little sick to my stomach because I felt like I was talking to the wall, but I kept doing it. And the difference between this time coming to AA and the other times, I was willing to do stuff that I didn't understand why and follow sponsor directions. And I did that. And in early sobriety, you have a lot of time on your hands because the days are really, really long when you're not drinking. And I didn't know what to do with myself. And my group didn't have a ton of meetings then. And I would go to Preston group on the weekends because they have meetings all day long. And I went to all of them. And I would sit there and go to the meeting and try to walk around and go sit in the room and wait for the next meeting, just sit there and be sad and try to eat something. And I just went to a ton of meetings to fill up my day. And like I said, because I didn't know what else to do. But me and my sponsor, we went through the book. I'll share, how much time do I have here? We just went through the book. We read through the book page by page and did the steps as they're outlined. No worksheets, no anything extra. We just did the steps as it came up. And my experience with going through those steps, I really didn't understand the significance of what I was doing when I was doing it. It took me a few steps down the road to look back and understand what I had agreed to do or what I was doing. And, as far as that step 1 went, I did understand that I was powerless over alcohol, but I still didn't think my life was unmanageable. Driving up on the dirt tracks, could have killed someone. $50,000 in credit card debt coming into AA because of the way I was living. No friends, no joy in life. I didn't see that as unmanageable what it was. My outsides weren't, but my insides were. But the tough part for me came, step 2 and step 3 when we're talking about God. And I will tell you, I still don't understand God. I just know that I pray and I do believe in a higher power. And when I trust that my life goes better. But when I try to figure it out, my head feels like it's going to explode. And so I just don't try. I've just surrendered to it. And, but, on that step 3, when my sponsor, are you willing to turn your will and your power over to a power greater than yourself? It was hard for me to say yes to that because I had God right up there like 2 months ago, right up there with the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. And now you want me to trust this fictitious character, I thought. But all we had to do, all he made me agree to say was, how can you 100% say there is no God? And I couldn't. When I looked at like the universe and the stars and nature and babies, I love little kids. I could not say that there is 100% no God. And so that was enough for me to crack the door to get through the rest of the steps, to actually make that spiritual connection, to get to that higher power, because I really didn't have it then, but I said I did. And when I was new, I was checking boxes. I wanted to get in and get out. I thought, let's get these 12 steps done so I can get out of here and get on with my life. I didn't know that we lived in these steps for the rest of your life. I was just trying to get it knocked out as fast as I could. And talking about that, get stuff done as fast as I could. My sponsor, this is just a little side story. My sponsor got another sponsee when he was sponsoring me. And when I was new, I was still kind of crazy. And I got jealous that he had another sponsee. And I was real mean to that other guy. And when he'd sit next to me at meetings, I'd get up and move. And I'd ask my sponsor, what step is he on? And I know how stupid that is now, but then I was so mad. I'm like, you don't need another sponsee. You have me. And so, anyway, and I was also really competitive when I was new in sobriety. I wanted y'all to know how good I was doing. I thought I was going to win AA. And they'd asked me to chair a meeting over there at Bishop Arts. I had like 5 months sobriety. I'm like, wow, they see how spiritual I am. They see it. And like nobody else wanted to chair that meeting on a Tuesday night. And so it got handed to me, but I really thought they had seen something special in me. But I will talk about, the difference now between then is doing things to help someone else that you may never meet in Alcoholics Anonymous. Doing stuff and you don't have to tell anybody about it, doing the right thing when no one's looking. That's the difference now. And one of those meetings when I was at Preston Group, I just needed someone to talk to when I was new. And there was a guy there who had some really good stuff to say. And after the meeting, I'm like, do you have time to talk? And he said, sure. And we went to the parking lot. And you know what he did? He never looked at his watch or his phone. He never said, you got 15 minutes. He stood there with me as long as I stood there. And he got my number, and he continued to call me every week to see if I was still sober, to check on me. And I'm like, who is this guy? This is what we do for each other. Those little things, to me, are as important as sponsorship. Those things when you greet a newcomer and you remember their name the next time. Because I'm shallow. Your name comes in one year and goes out the other. I don't remember it. But there was a guy when I was new at Bishop who remembered my name the day I came back and remembered it and said, sit next to me. That was huge to me. That made a big difference, that feeling included. I couldn't hide in the back. Someone knew my name. But, I'm going through the steps, and I forget how much sobriety I had. And our group was having their group conscience meeting on a Friday night. And I kept seeing it written on the bulletin board. And I kind of knew what a group conscience meeting was. And I didn't think I had enough sobriety to be there. But talking about that one-on-one connection that we make in Alcoholics Anonymous, Doug was the group chair then, and at the end of the meeting, he goes, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going home. He's like, well, group conscience is about to start. And he goes, why don't you just sit back down and be part of? And so when I got that invitation and told to sit down, I stayed. And I got a service commitment, and I had one the whole time I was at that group. I kept hearing people say, get in the middle of the boat. And I did. I could tell who the people were that were actively involved in their home group and the people that were just the meeting makers. And I wanted to be in the middle. And so I was. But I don't know if I would have been if it hadn't been for that one person, that invitation asking me to sit back down. But I'll tell you, go through steps 4 and 5. I've heard some people talk about these amazing experiences they had when they left their 5th steps. I didn't have that at all. I felt horrible at the end of it. I felt beat down and exhausted, and my sponsor was taking notes the whole time. And at the end, he gave me this little report card that had all my character defects written on it, and like had them in order, like which ones were the worst. And he told me, you like to judge and punish people. And I shared that at the beginning, and I really didn't know I did. I had no idea I did. But what I learned from doing that 4th step, it doesn't matter who the resentment against, what it is, or what they did. It just really matters what my mistakes were. I hear a lot of people when they do their inventory talk about what was my part. Well, the book didn't even say that. It says, where were your mistakes? And so my mistakes are always the same. I'm judging, I'm punishing people, I'm cutting people off. And it helped me see that pattern in my behavior that caused me to isolate myself and to distance myself from God and to drink over and over again. And so now, I'm not saying those character defects don't happen or pop up like they did during COVID with my home group, but I'm aware of it now, and I have a solution. I know how not to act on those anymore. And I really thought when I went home and I did that 6 and 7, I thought, I'm going to say this prayer and they're going to be gone. And you know what? They weren't. And but like I said, going through this process, I'm now aware of those things, and I just don't have to act on them. I don't have to pick up the phone and call somebody. I used to love to gossip. Now, don't get me wrong, I still love hearing it. I just don't need to share it anymore, and that's the difference. You know, like somebody will say something stupid in a meeting, and I'll want to call somebody after the meeting. Guess what so-and-so said? I don't need to do that anymore. I don't need to create that drama where it doesn't need to be created anymore. Am I adding conflict to people's lives? It's just not what I want to be. But I don't really have any amazing step 8 and 9 stories like a lot of people do. The only thing that's significant to me for that is the amends I made to my mom was just not really good, because I made it early in sobriety, and then I continued to do the same behaviors. It took me a lot of years to not treat her the way I was treating her. And my current sponsor, me and my mom often don't get along, because we're so close in age. We grew up almost like siblings. And my sponsor told me, you know how to honor an AA commitment. Why can't you just treat your mother the same way, just like any other commitment? And when you go home for Christmas, you shut your mouth, you don't say a word, you don't argue, you do whatever she wants, and you just treat it like an AA commitment. And I did that a couple of Christmases ago, and all the words that are flying around in here don't always need to come out of my mouth. And through following that sponsor direction and a lot of praying in the bathroom at that house, I was able to keep my mouth shut. And at the end of that holiday, she hugged me and cried and said, this was the best Christmas ever. That wasn't the old me. The old me would have fought with her and made up something to storm out of the house, to go get drunk and not come home till the next day. I did whatever she wanted, and I was just trying to be the best son I could be. And and just a couple weeks ago, we were on the phone, and she teared up, and and she still yells at me. She started to get some dementia and fights with me, and it was just nice to hear that she's like, I know all the nice things you do for me. I'm really appreciative of what you do. And that I would have never got that before Alcoholics Anonymous. But step 10, I will talk about, I don't always have a lot to say on step 10, or even when I say, like at the end of the night, when I'm reviewing my daily conduct, if it gets to the point where it's at the end of the night and I'm looking at that, I didn't do something right during my day. If I fight with somebody at work, I need to go try to make that right as soon as I can and make that amends. I don't want to wait until the evening to do that. And I will say, though, staying current with your sponsor is huge. There was a point in my sobriety where I was dealing with something. I don't know how much time sobriety you guys have, but there was a time when I was sober and I was having these feelings and this stuff was going through my head, and I thought I shouldn't be feeling this way. I've got 5 years sobriety. I shouldn't. And I wouldn't tell my sponsor. And I kept it and I kept it, and I suffered and I suffered. And then finally he could see it on my face, and because I was ashamed. And finally, as soon as I told him, he was like, boom, we're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. And I followed his directions, and the problem was solved. But it was just eating me up, what I was going through, because I was ashamed. And I will say that so many people say the meeting is for the newcomer. The most important person in the meeting is the newcomer. It doesn't say that on the traditions. We're here for the alcoholic who still suffers. And that was me at that time, but I didn't believe it. I thought I shouldn't be feeling that way. And so that's all. Just stay current with your sponsor, and don't keep secrets, because those secrets will eat you up. And as far as 11 goes, I don't have some amazing, I wish I did. I wish I could tell you at 6 years that I have some like meditation room and some prayer room. I don't. But I do try to stay structured with it and do it daily, because what I tell my guys that I sponsor is like, you know what? A half week prayer is better than no prayer at all. Just keep going through the motions, keep going through the motions, keep going through the motions. You brush your teeth every day, you put your deodorant on every day, you do your prayers every day, no matter what. And I do my meditation, and sometimes it's better than others. But I know for myself that when life is going good, my prayers get weaker, my meditation gets weaker, and as things start going bad in my life, those things increase and I get pulled closer back into God. And why do I stop doing things that make me feel good? I don't know, but it's just what we do. But I have found for myself that when I need to slow myself down, instead of doing a prayer, and I won't call it journaling because I don't like to say I journal, but I write letters to God, because I will rush through my prayer real quick to get back to my Netflix. And but writing a letter to God, it slows me down. I'll do my meditation and write that letter, and as I'm writing that letter, those answers, the intuition that the book talks about, it does come to me more often than not when I'm doing that, and that's just works for me. But I will tell you, how much time do I have? Oh, we're getting close. Step 12, to me, that is the biggest part of this program. That is what keeps me sober today, and that's what kept me sober through COVID. I was fortunate enough to find a sponsee during quarantine. He was at a treatment center and got my number and called me up, and I didn't meet him for months. We Zoomed and read through the book every night. I had the time because I wasn't working. He wasn't doing anything. We read through the book. We Zoomed every night, and he didn't get to go to an in-person meeting for probably 6 months, and he's about to get his year chip in a couple of weeks. And it's rare that, from my experience, most of the sponsees that have stuck with me are people that we've met, they've heard you share. It's not a random cold call like that, like I got with him, or we connected and he has stayed sober. And it was a great experience for me because it forced me to get up and read through that book again and, get back up on that horse. Because when you're in it with a new person, you've got to be on your game when you're taking them through the steps. And so I love that when I was hearing all the people fussing about we can't meet in person. He didn't get to a meeting for 6 months. We didn't meet for months. And he was able to find the solution of Alcoholics Anonymous without these 4 walls and a ceiling, which is pretty amazing. I know that wasn't everybody's experience, but he was able to do it. But I don't always like, sponsorship is not always fun. It's work if you guys are doing it. They some call it inconvenient times. And I will tell you, my first experience, my sponsor made me start sponsoring this guy at 6 months sobriety, and he was an African-American drag queen. And he only asked me to sponsor him because I was gay and he was the other gay guy at the group. And, anyway, he would not follow directions. He was angry and would yell at me and fight with me, and he fired me. And then he was going to go find a new fellowship. I'm like, fine. And then he called me, and I saw him, and I'm like, no. And he asked me to take him back, and I did. And I remember we were sitting there reading through the book before the meeting started, and I don't remember what I did that made him mad, but he slammed his book and he stomped out and slammed the door. And then he came back and he goes, I need your sponsor's phone number. He was going to call and tell on me. So I gave him my sponsor's phone number, let him tell on me. And then he called me back a couple hours later and apologized. And that was my first guy that I sponsored that got a year. And that's when I finally felt it, because I wasn't expecting that feeling when he got it to pick up his windshield chip. He was not the same guy who was yelling at me and calling my sponsor to tattle a year later. It was an amazing experience. So if you're not sponsoring or working with other men, you're missing out, because that was better than driving any new car off the lot, hearing what he had to say from the podium that night. And now I've got guys who have guys and are about to have their own guys, and it's like right in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous where I need to be. And but like I said, I don't always want to work with other people. It's inconvenient, and I can get into my own head, but always when I'm with someone else, I can get out of my head. There was one Sunday where I was caught up in my own head about something, and I'm like, I'm not going to lay here and stare at the ceiling and pout today. I'm going to pick up my book and I'm going to go to the 24-hour club and try to find somebody to help. And I just sat in there all afternoon, and people would walk by and talk to me. I didn't really find anybody, but I took the right action instead of sitting there pouting. And but the funny part of that story, I get home and it's about 9 o'clock at night, and a friend of mine from a home group called me in crisis and needed to talk. And I'm like, sure, what's up? And he said, well, it's really more of an in-person conversation. Can I come over? I'm like, it's 9 o'clock on a Sunday night. I really just wanted to be of service today from like 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And now you're just really inconveniencing me. I'm like, but no, come on over. And I did the right thing. And I listened to him, because that's what we do. And that's what I continue to do. And I have service commitments in my home group. I have a district commitment. I don't say those things to brag, but I have a lot of commitments because I need to stay busy in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because if I don't, then too much free time is not good for me still in sobriety. But I want to read real quick for you. Where's my book? It's like my favorite little line in the book before I wrap this up. I know I'm finishing a little early, but I've heard that no one is offended when a speaker ends early. All right. When we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. I love that because once I surrendered to this program and surrendered to God, my life is completely different, and my ideas never did work, but the God I did does, and I never have to live the way I used to again. So thank you guys.